On the hunt for comfortable, timeless Western boots? You already know the best place to shop for quality boots is at your local Tacova store. So stop by Tacova's Nashville, at the Mall at Green Hills, or on Broadway by Ryman Auditorium. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from. Grab a cold one as you shop and get fitted by a pro. Tacova's Nashville is at your service, and you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of their expert staff. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick new boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tacova's. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. Today on CityCast Nashville, we're talking to Community Review Board Chair Alicia Haddock about the recent allegations in a formal complaint by former MNPD Lieutenant Garrett Davidson that high-ranking MNPD officials worked with Republican state lawmakers to pass a law last year dismantling the Community Oversight Board, which was created to keep the police accountable for violence and misconduct. The Community Oversight Board then became the Community Review Board, and that single word changing from oversight to review had a big impact on the power of the board. Alicia will tell us exactly what that means. Keep an ear out for those words. The NAACP and other organizers joined the Community Review Board at a press conference on June 12th to present a list of demands and call for an investigation of MNPD and Metro Legal's role in hindering investigations. While all of this is going on, negotiations for a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, have stalled. So investigations of nearly 50 complaints the CRB has received about police misconduct are stalled too. There's a lot more to talk about, but we're going to break it down for you. CityCast Nashville is presented by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tacova's. It's June 17th, 2024. I'm Grace Fuse, and this is what Nashville's talking about. I want to give people who don't really know what's going on a little bit of an explanation. That's like my primary purpose here, because I think a lot of people aren't totally aware of how big this issue is. Can we just start with the basics? And would you tell me why the Community Oversight Board was originally created?
Well, it was originally created because there was a shooting death by a MNPD officer of a young man named Jacquees Clemens. And that was in 2017. And then, a few months later in 2018, there was another police shooting of Daniel Hambrick. Now, after Jacquees Clemens' murder, a group formed and Community Oversight Now to really push this effort of community oversight in Nashville that had been in the works for decades. It was an untimely death, an unnecessary death. That is what propelled us to go through these iterations of oversight. Signatures were gathered and it was on the ballot. The people spoke and over 134,000 people voted for Amendment 1. Over 60% of Davidson County voters voted in favor of oversight. That sent a clear message that it was needed and this is something that the people wanted. And so we were able to get that oversight in Nashville. And I think we've been the better for it since then.
And this word oversight is super important because what was once the Community Oversight Board is now the Community Review Board.
That's correct.
Can you tell us why the Community Oversight Board was abolished?
The Community Oversight Board was met with opposition from the very beginning. It was met with opposition from our local leaders, some of our mayoral administrations, as well as the FOP, and then as well as the state. And so as the people made their voices clearly heard, we had to forge on as Nashville citizens and residents, even in the face of opposition. And so what we're doing now, still facing opposition, and we're still forging ahead.
Can you tell me what the difference is in what the Community Review Board is capable of doing versus the Community Oversight Board in terms of its power and scope?
Well, the gist of it really is investigations, right? So before we had investigative power, we could make, recommendations of discipline for officers. So it wasn't the police policing themselves. It was the community. These investigations were above reproach. They were fair, honest, transparent. And so now that has been taken away. And so we will take in your complaint. We will interview you, make sure we understand, what the issue is. We will write that down. Within 3 days, we will send it to OPA for them to investigate it. And then they send us their findings, and then we review it on the back end.
People are going to hear about this memorandum of understanding. Can you tell us what that means and also why this is all paused negotiations on it and what that means in terms of the consequences?
Yeah, so we had been we had a memorandum of understanding with MNPD, with the DA, as the Community Oversight Board. And what it did was it was a set of agreements that said, you will do this, we will, provide this, or, it was back and forth what we agreed on, what records we had access to. It spelled out what the relationship would look like, right? What the work would look like, because the Community Review Board is very much so a metropolitan government department, right along with MNPD. Our last successful MOU, Dr. Phyllis Hildreth facilitated that. It went well. We felt that it should have still been in effect past July 1, 2023, because we were still the Community Review Board and Oversight Board for an additional 120 days. MNPD was advised by Metro Legal that MOU was null and void, and they didn't have to give us records. And so just through the reconstitution, us, getting back up and running as the Nashville Community Review Board, we started to take our complaints like we normally do, but the work has stalled because we cannot review the cases in their totality because they are holding records, they're holding body-worn camera footage, those things that we need to evaluate their investigation. And so now it is causing a backlog in our work. And so that's why we were really pressing and really trying to get to that MOU negotiation meeting. But those two high-ranking officials were named in the complaint as the ones who allegedly worked to undo the will of the people. So that's what paused the MOU negotiations. Now we will have to find other trustworthy, good faith individuals within MNPD so our staff can do the work that they've been called to do. I think what we have a misconception of is that, you have bad people, right? And these bad people are coming to the Community Review Board complaining about how the police did them wrong, which that is not the case at all. We serve the residents of Nashville, Tennessee, of Davidson County. And so it does not matter what color you are, what religion you are, where you live. We will handle matters of police misconduct. And it will be within the confines of the law. But just because you're a police officer doesn't mean that we won't take your case just as seriously and we won't address it in the most confidential manner as we possibly can, because of the history of retaliatory behavior that we are aware of behind the blue wall. And so we want to make sure everyone has a opportunity to participate in accountability, transparency, and integrity.
Can you tell us what your message was at the press conference you held on June 12th?
The press conference was really a gathering of community members, community organizations that wanted to raise their voices in support of accountability, transparency, and integrity within MNPD. I think what we saw and what we experienced as we read the 61-page complaint that was referred to the Community Review Board was very concerning. We knew some of the things were happening, but for someone to step up and be brave enough to say and raise their hand to say, I am a witness, this did happen, is pretty remarkable. And so kudos to Lieutenant Davidson for having the courage to do that, because I know it took a lot of courage. But the press conference was all about solidarity. It was about sending a message that even though the state government gutted the COB, we're still here as a review board, abiding by the law. But understanding that if we don't fight for our freedom, no one will, right? And then also making the public aware that we're in a public safety crisis.
Just to back up for a second, in case anybody missed this, because I want to emphasize it. In the complaint, who exactly did it allege was involved in abolishing the Community Oversight Board, and how was MNPD involved?
Yeah, so two of the highest ranking officials in MNPD. And it even mentioned that Chief Drake was aware that they worked with the state to create this law. And in that complaint, it also said that they received a commendation, right? They received an award for helping get this law passed from the Office of Professional Accountability. We are so grateful that we did have access to this information. These last 18 months have been grueling for the Community Oversight Board turned Community Review Board, where we had to fight with the people who allegedly behind closed doors were helping to create, the abolishment of the entity that was charged to bring oversight to their department.
So this complaint was filed by a former MNPD lieutenant, Garrett Davidson. 61 pages is a lot. Can you tell us what else was in that complaint?
Well, we know that the complaint now is under investigation, so I won't go into specifics. But just generally speaking, it really centered around a couple of high ranking MNPD officials that had their hands in a lot of Office of Professional Accountability cases, right? So, as it pertains to cherry picking, right? Who gets to stay? Who leaves, what infractions, measures, and disciplines match those depending on who the officer is, right? You violated the policy as a police officer. And instead of going through the process, maybe they were, allowed to resign before the investigative process was complete. I took away our officers on the beat don't get a fair shake, right? The other complaint, right, that came in, it is confidential, but it's very similar in nature. It has, nepotism and just all kinds of egregious work habits that violate policy, right? And these people are coming to us with receipts in hand, right? So they're not coming saying, hey, I saw this. They actually have proof that these things happen. And so it just brings us to another level of dishonesty and mistrust. And really, it speaks to the reason why we need oversight. We need an Office of Public Safety that can be protected and secured, and to ensure that every citizen has a right to being safe in their neighborhoods and in their communities and in public. So not just us. We've had complaints from tourists because of their interactions with the police. And so we want to make sure that when people come and people live in Nashville, that they have an opportunity to be safe from harm, not just from criminals, but even from the people that are who have sworn an oath to protect us.
So, Alicia, how exactly does this affect public safety overall?
Well, I think it affects public safety because they're charged to keep Nashville safe. They're the guardians of the city. And so when you're talking about biases and impartiality, I think it puts all of us in jeopardy, right? We know that Black neighborhoods are over policed, but I'm saying to us that everyone should be affected and worried about this public safety crisis, because it does not matter what neighborhood you're in. If you interact with a police officer that has exhibited bad behavior but no disciplinary action, we don't know what could happen. They saw the flags, they didn't do anything about it, and then the behavior escalates to something criminal.
Yeah, it affects everybody, and it snowballs.
It does.
So what exactly do you need from the mayor's office and Metro Legal?
We need some protections because we were very vulnerable, during this entire process, not knowing that allegedly that the people who we've been talking with and working with and, scheduling meetings with to talk about the memorandum of understanding, that they were the very ones allegedly working to undo the will of the people. And so we also wanted to be a priority for Mayor Freddie O'Connell. I will say that since his inauguration and him becoming mayor of Nashville, he has been very supportive of the Nashville Community Review Board. He really has. But I think there are issues within other departments, such as MENPD, such as Metro Legal, right, that we need some firm and swift action. But I will say it has been a very lonely road prior to him taking office because we had very little support from our local government. We were on Capitol Hill when it was, the bill was kind of moving through the committees and there were just lies being told, and we really didn't have the support we needed from the Metro Law Department. And so I'm so glad that MNPD is not handling this investigation as we first heard when this complaint came out, when Chief Drake said that they would be investigating it because their policies may need refinement. And I'm paraphrasing. That just wasn't going to work.
And a lot of this centers around the idea of trust. With that, what do you think, in your opinion, this says about our leadership, whether that's the state or the mayor's office or Metro Legal?
I think it sets us back. We were gaining momentum. We really were. I think people felt safe. They were, continuing to learn about the work of the Community Oversight Board. Our community engagement department was at, events across the city, explaining what we do. We had organizations that supported us. They understood what we did. Silent no longer, right? This sexual misconduct and sexual assault, these sexual assault centers, they understood what we were doing and the work that we were doing. And even nationally, IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, we had their support. And so having all of that support, right, really building it and shaping it to fit the needs of Nashvillians and to have it undone by legislators who don't live in Nashville, right? And truth be told, we have a lot of police officers who don't live in Davidson County, right? And so to have that type of overreach that set us back, this set us back a lot. And so how do we continue to gain momentum? How do we build that trust? Because either way it goes, if we get the oversight board back, if we don't, however, if we don't have the cooperation of MNPD, there'll never be trust between the community and the police.
So what happens if nothing changes at all?
Grace, something has to change. And so I shudder to think, what if nothing happens, right? Mm-hmm. That's why we held the press conference yesterday, because the powers that be have to understand that something must change. The culture behind that thin blue wall, it has to change. We are putting our public servants in jeopardy. And so, women are being put in jeopardy. People are being made vulnerable because of their rank status. And then the general public, Black communities being over-policed, where, we have instances of people getting shot. Daniel Hambrick and Jacquees Clemens, they died horrific deaths. And that was here in Nashville. And those were just the two, that kind of sparked the Community Oversight Board. But there were dozens and dozens of people who were murdered by the police. And of course, we can't forget about the 2020 George Floyd. Everybody saw that. Across the world, it's etched in our memories. If you close your eyes, you don't even have to close your eyes. If you just think, you can see that scene on that curb, on the street of George Floyd dying because an officer had his knee on his neck. and he said that he could not breathe. We cannot have that in Nashville. We're not saying, nothing will happen, but with oversight and the type of oversight that we built, we can deter some of those egregious actions, but then also we can help spark some very, very good behavior from MNPD officers. And there are some good officers out there.
That's all really powerful. And Alicia, I really appreciate you coming on and explaining this to people who might not be totally up to date. It's really important, and we're here with you. And thank you so much for all of your service for the community.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing the work that you do, making sure people understand the critical issues that are happening today. This is what we need. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Make sure you keep an eye out for developments on this story. And if you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye!